for joining us again. I know it has been a full and intense day, and I hope you were able to get some caffeine or sugar into you to carry you into the next big party, which is tonight in the exhibit hall, so looking forward to that. Before that, thank you for joining us and sharing a bit more time. Really what we want to do is pick your brains and start a conversation. I mentioned this morning in the opening remarks that we are starting a nonprofit, which is kind of working title, called MWXX. And we, just this afternoon, in fact, you know how that goes. Let's see, have we got any projection going up here?
Pretty.
Oh. You're seeing my screensaver, isn't that beautiful? All right, this is going to be some mirroring thing, right?
Help.
You got it? Mirror, okay, stop mirroring, sorry about that. So, you know how it goes. We stood up a website this afternoon to kind of help show you some of the things that we've been thinking and hopefully provoke some ideas and feedback and questions from you all as well. So the starting idea, and again, this is all very beta, very draft, just putting out some straw men for conversation. We're thinking about new ways to catalyze transformative projects in the GLAM sector at a speed that keeps pace with innovation and in partnership with both philanthropic and for-profit stakeholders. So that's kind of a loose mission or purpose statement. We imagine that the MWXX organization would have a number of projects under it, but our flagship kind of starter project is really around storytelling. It's around creating content for all of the incredible platforms and technologies that we've spent so many years developing, but which frankly, quite often, all too often when we go to them, there's just not a lot of content there to make them very sticky. We're interested in working with galleries, libraries, archives, museums, but also other kinds of creators and creative organizations to put collections, content, stories, and scholarships out into the world, enabling those critical elements of our organizations and activities to connect better to people and places in new and inspiring ways. So as a sort of a pilot project, we've taken over the Connected Cities initiative that started out in Baltimore last month, actually, with support and sponsorship from Easy Travel. And we're looking in the month of May to kind of convene a group of stakeholders across the city, not just museums and galleries and libraries and archives, but also the organizations who serve both the citizens and the visitors to Baltimore. So everyone from the tourism agencies to the hotels to the businesses that really support the city, and finding ways to connect both their efforts and their stories and their content in a way that creates a kind of a fabric across the city. So you'll find more information about that at MWXX.us. But that's the first initiative that we're kind of getting our arms around, but we have a lot of other ideas too, and want to hear yours as well. So some of our early ideas are really inspired by kind of models of creating consolidated and shared services so that there are new kinds of economies of scale possible for organizations in the GLAM sector. I'm personally very interested in museum business model innovation and inspired by things like, for example, the New Inc. Incubator that is part of New Museum, and also ACME's new initiative to create co-working shared space between industry partners and museum people. We're interested in the ethics, as kind of spoken to so eloquently by Cory Doctorow this morning, the ethics of data, copyright, digital rights management. Also just serving as a convener for multi-institutional innovation projects, talent matching matching even. Helping museums and other organizations find the right people, be that full-time staff or temporary consultants to help realize their projects and their needs. And you've already been aware perhaps that we've done a number of kind of smaller events, deep dives, workshops, round tables, that seem to perhaps lend themselves to fostering not just the kind of global network that Museums and the Web has become, but also going deeper in regions and communities, and helping both focus in on specific topics of interest, but also create local communities that can support each other in projects and work. So interested in your other ideas, we've also stood up a new email address, future@newsweb.us. So I'd love to hear from you that way, but also in this session. And John Alexander, whom some of you might have met, has been, oops, sorry, wrong button, has been helping us kind of think through these first steps of how we might work as a nonprofit and what else we might do that takes our activities beyond the conference. Not to give up the conference by any means, but to ask what new ways we might be able to serve and support the community. So John's going to kind of take us through some of that early thinking and then open the floor to you all. And thanks again for joining the conversation.
Yes. So I wanted to start actually by asking for that, because I think Nancy and the team have been really kind of going straight at this and going, this is great, like once you decide the moment is here to go, okay, Museums of the Web, the spirit of Museums of the Web and the vibe that's been in this room and in every session I've been in. I haven't seen at many conferences around the world, right, and I've been to a few. But the spirit that's here and the moment and the energy that feels like it's created, this is a really big moment of going, actually, we can't just keep that in a few days anymore. And these guys have been so in this that they're like, and we're going to do it, and here's some of them. But I think we just want to take a moment, actually, and can we just give them a round of applause for going, right, this is going to be a big thing, right? This is really good. Because they wouldn't do it for themselves, because they're too humble. So, an Englishman doing it for you, I mean. My name's John Alexander. I run an organisation called the New Citizenship Project. We're kind of like a consultancy, and we have been helping Nancy and the guys think this through and start to develop these ideas. The way we work is very much rooted in a story that we tell, an analysis that we have of where we're at as a society and where the world's going. And the people we work with are the people who, when we tell that story, we come through strange connections and find the people who for whom they go, oh, we recognise that, and that makes sense of what we were kind of sniffing at anyway. And we want to work with that, and we want to take our place in that. So, and that's what's happened with Nancy and Rich and Titus and the team here. And what they want, as a result, as we go into this world of NewsWeb as a non-profit rather than Museums and the Web as conference, first and foremost, although as Nancy says there will very much still be a conference, keep your diaries clear for next year. The first thing to say is, this is, the non-profit organisation is all of us, is all of you, all of them. It's not, and so the conversations we've been having are about how do we make sure that as this change happens, we're involving everyone in this conversation and harnessing the ideas and energy of this community, because that is what NewsWeb is. So as a result, what we discussed was me just doing a little bit of a session that shares that story that we worked with and that kind of caught these guys' eyes with you. And so everyone's kind of on the same page. And then share a little bit of where we've got to so far and kind of what as a team, the NewsWeb team feel we know, and then kind of what we don't know. Where's the uncertainty? Where's the open space? And use that as the point to really open up the conversation and open to the floor, open to the rest of the week, open to here on in, right? What we haven't done with this is gone, right, we've figured out exactly what this non-profit looks like, exactly what it's going to do, exactly what the projects are, done a big press launch, delivered a service, like, this is the soft launch this week. You're inside the launching of this, not on the outside of it, right? So that's the spirit of what we're doing. Does that kind of make sense? Can I get a few sort of reassuring nods? Yeah, good. More than nods. So I'm going to start by sharing that story. I'm going to do it pretty quickly so we can get into the conversation. We talk about the citizen shift, and the full report is at citizenship.info if you want to check it out. But ultimately, this is a story that says it's a story of the evolution of the role of the individual in society. Now, I've suddenly elevated into lofty, plonky language. But fundamentally, our work is based on an idea and a reflection that something is going on, and something has been going on for some time in how we think about ourselves. And our analysis is that at any given time in society, there's an idea of who we are that dominates and structures how we behave. And over the course of the last 1.5 centuries, 150 years or so, we think that there's been one complete shift in that dominant logic, and there's another kind of happening right now. So we talk about subject, consumer, citizen. And just to parse those out a little more, in the era of the subject, what I mean by that is that the dominant idea of the individual was something like, keep your head down, do as you're told, accept your station, and if everyone does that, if everyone does their duty and does what they're supposed to do, then the best society will result. And that story kind of fell apart in the early part of the 20th century, and particularly through the two world wars. And out of the Second World War, the story of the consumer kind of comes up. So if the idea of the subject is keep your head down, do as you're told, get what you're given, the story of the consumer is something like get the best deal for yourself, look out for number one, choose the best deal from the options that are offered for you. And if everyone does that, then the best society will result. And our thing is that, and it's interesting when you look at it like that, because from subject to consumer, that's actually a really liberating shift. Like the freedom to choose, the freedom to shape your own identity. And that is a very big difference from how a lot of people talk about consumerism. But actually the darker side of consumerism is there as well. And our story is that what's happening right now is that just as the story of the subject fell apart before, the story of the consumer is falling apart right now. And what's bubbling up is this idea of people as citizens. And if so, subject is do as you're told, consumer is get the best deal for yourself, citizen is something like shape the society, play an active role, be a creative agent, not just the chooser, be a voice of the collective, not just a voice of yourself. So I'm going to parse that out a little bit more. And the thing that helps me do that beautifully for anyone who's a storyteller, and many of you in the room are, when you stumble on something like the year 1984 is significant, you sort of think, yes! So 1984 starts with the most famous ad in history, Apple launching the Macintosh. And I'm going to do an American accent now, for which I apologise. But the end of this advert, there's a voiceover. So the ad is a takeoff of Orwell's 1984, sort of trooping down the corridor. If you haven't seen it, a young woman runs in and smashes the screen that Big Brother's voice is projecting from. And up comes this voiceover and it says, on January 24th, Apple will release Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984. Sorry. Thank you. One person. And what we have there then is this idea, so it's not just launching a computer, right? What they're doing there is they're saying the era when you only had one choice is over. The consumer is in charge now. The creative age, the sort of age of freedom of expression is here. And really fascinating, so before that, if you wanted a computer, you got an IBM, right? Apple came into that market and said, now there's a different thing going on. Fascinatingly, colouring in that picture, that same year Virgin Atlantic launched, doing the same thing in the airline market, right? So suddenly there's a consumer champion in a market previously dominated by flag carriers with no options. Also that year, Band-Aid, the first Band-Aid. So Band-Aid, and what that was doing is it had this story in it that said, we can buy stuff to solve global poverty, right? We can buy stuff to make the world better. Add into that, the Body Shop. We can buy, the Body Shop floated on the stock exchange in 1984 as well, and bringing with it to the mainstream this idea that we can buy stuff to save the planet. So, and then the other one that I love, and we're in Los Angeles, right? The LA Olympics, 1984. How many of you knew that the LA Olympics were the first Olympics ever to be funded by commercial sponsorship? Until 1984, one man. Too many. Until 1984, it wasn't possible to take commercial sponsorship to fund the games. LA were the only city to apply in the end to host the 1984 games, and their condition was taking on sponsorship. So what the games say is they say that they're an expression of the idea that we can buy stuff to fund global sport and culture as well, right? So the reason why I use this story is that together you see this is the age of the consumer as a golden age. We can choose the stuff we want and we can solve the world's problems as a result. But, and this is the bit where we go, actually the logic of the consumer is now falling in on itself. So this is a table from a study we did with a big polling agency in the UK called YouGov. What we did was we asked 3,000 people 2 questions. Firstly, to what extent do you think it's important to participate actively in society? And secondly, to what extent do you think it's important to be involved in your local community? Now the clever bit was this, we split the 3,000 people into 3 groups. The control group, the blue column, was simply asked those 2 questions. The citizen group, the yellow column, before they saw those 2 questions, they were asked, to what extent do you agree that everyone is born equal? The red group is the consumer column. Before they saw those 2 questions, they were asked, to what extent do you think it's important to find brands that fit your personality? Now, this data is regardless of the extent to which people agreed with that primary statement. If you saw the question, if you saw the statement, it's important to find brands that fit your personality, you were significantly less likely to agree with the participation questions. Purely by seeing it in a questionnaire, it conditions you. We did other surveys where we did other studies where we gave people a survey of environmental and social attitudes for 500 people. The front cover says consumer response study for 500 citizen response study. If you answered the consumer response study, you were significantly less bothered about each other or the planet. This story, this language, this logic is telling us not to care about each other, and that's why it's falling apart on itself. But the exciting thing is, and this is where we start to get into, okay, this is the moment in time, we believe, because all around the world, in all different aspects of society, initiatives and ideas are taking root that speak to people as citizens, and this is where the real energy in the world is right now. And I think this speaks in a way to what Corey was talking about this morning, actually. This is about, these initiatives are things that don't treat people as things to be sensed, but as sensors. These are things that treat people as agents of their own destiny rather than as purchasers, as objects to be sold to. So on the left-hand column, I've got community initiatives, in the middle formal politics, and on the right business. So I'm going to pick out just 1 or 2, and these are selections, but I want to get into the conversation, so I'm just going to pick out a couple. The £10 note in the bottom left-hand corner, that is an example of local currency, and this is booming all over the world, and there's something like 4,000 complementary currencies in circulation. This, I think, is the coolest one, because it's in Brixton, which is where I live, and it has David Bowie on the £10 note. But these things are really genuinely serious initiatives that they're matched against the national currency slightly, and they act as a slightly discounted incentive to shop in your local community and keep money circulating in the local economy. So they're a major initiative in enabling people to be citizens in how they consume. It's a very interesting phenomenon. In the middle column, I'll pick out Better Reykjavik, the top thing. So this is a deliberative democracy platform in the city of Reykjavik. And over 50%, so basically it's a very simple Reddit-style forum. You propose an idea for how the city should be run, it gets upvoted, downvoted, and things get incorporated into the city statute. Over 70% of the population of the city of Reykjavik have participated in this platform, and more than 300 ideas have been incorporated into city law. Like, these things are amazing, right? This is huge. Lumia is a thing that's the engine in Podemos, the movement in Spain, and so I could go on and on. On the right-hand side, I just pick out, so if the Brixton Pound is a lovely example of people, communities kind of taking agency over their own lives and saying, we're citizens and we're going to make this community, we're not just going to deal with whatever given to us. The Better Reykjavik is a lovely example of formal politics, and people going, actually, we can play an active role in this, we don't just have to vote, and that's not the limit of our agency here. On the right-hand side, I think the B Corporation movement, if people don't know it, so is basically the example of the world of business saying, actually, we're not just consumers of society either. It's not enough for businesses simply to seek to maximise profit on their own account. So the B Corporation movement has at its heart a new corporate entity in US law, which allows a profit-making business to state a purpose that it serves higher and that it holds higher than profit. It puts profit as a means to an end rather than an end in itself, yet still being a business. And this thing is now, the legislation was first, I think it was Maryland where it was first brought into law in 2010. It's now in 29 states across the US. The associated B Corporation movement, which is a certification scheme, is across the world and growing rapidly. This is everywhere and in every aspect of society. That's the kind of key point I'm making. So what's driving this? And this is where you'll start to see this is why we're here, right? One of the key things, there's two key drivers as we see it. The first is technology of society. And this takes us right back to Marshall McLuhan and the phrase, the medium is the message, right? So, and what McLuhan meant by that, as I'm sure most, if not all people in this room, but not so many in many of the audience I speak to, what he meant by that was that the dominant medium of society comes to shape how that whole society works, right? And what this image says beautifully is that, it's an image of a family clustered around television. It says that in the age of television, we became consumers in every aspect of our lives. It's a one-to-many medium. We can choose between the channels, we can choose the options, but we can't shape the options. There's a small number of people broadcasting the way society works, and we choose between things. Now look, we're in the age of the internet now, and I think that's one of the key things we were talking about this morning, right? When this conference first started in 1997, the internet wasn't the dominant medium of society. It only just has become now. And now we're in the time where the internet is shaping society, where it's not just that it's a technology that's in society, it's that we are becoming a many-to-many society because the internet is the dominant technology of it. That's the opportunity. The second driver is, and I've got an image here of two monkeys in glass boxes, which when Nancy saw the slide, she was like, what the hell are you going to say? So this is all about the second driver. So the first driver is technology, which makes it possible. The second driver is the way we're telling ourselves the story of human nature now is changing fundamentally. We've told ourselves a story of human nature for so long that says humans are basically nasty monkeys, right? We're selfish, we're competitive, we push each other down to get on top. And the reason I choose this slide is because this slide says that even monkeys are not just nasty monkeys. This slide is from this image is from a research study that was published under the title "Monkeys Demand Equal Pay for Equal Work." What happens here is that a monkey passes a stone through the window and is given a treat in return. First monkey passes a stone through the window and is given cucumber. Second monkey passes a stone through the window and is given grape. Monkeys prefer grape to cucumber. First monkey goes back again, hands stone through the window, gets given cucumber, looks at cucumber, throws cucumber at researcher. Second monkey goes in, gets grape, thinks, eats grape. In a significant proportion of the experiments where this was done, after 2 or 3 rounds, the second monkey starts to refuse the grape. Isn't that just unbelievable? I love that. So and what this is about, like I say, is this is saying we're telling ourselves a different story of evolution now. We're telling ourselves a story that appreciates that cooperation and collaboration and empathy are as much drivers of evolution as competition. It's not denying that those things exist, but it's saying they're part of the story. So when you put a many-to-many technology that shapes society together with a story of humanity that says we're collaborative creatures, you get a really big opportunity, and that is the era of the citizen. We just sum this up. I'm a massive geek, and I love this table. I'm very proud of this. But just one word summing up this shift. So subjects are dependent, consumers are independent, citizens are interdependent. In a subject area, you do stuff to people, consumer, you do it for them, citizen, you do it with them. I can do check this out. I think a lot of this, and you can start to see, I think those of you who are kind of parts of this community of museums and the web will start to see why this conversation kind of latched on with Nancy. So, what does that mean for museums then? So that's the URL if you do want to check out the report. So let's get down to business. When we look at this, the game we love to play is, what if you put subject, consumer, citizen over stuff? What does it tell you? And I think in this instance, when you look at museums, so let's say, okay, we're zooming in now, we're coming from the world to museums and the web, right? To MuseWeb. When you look at museums, museums are an artifact of the subject era. They were created as paternalistic institutions to do stuff, and where stuff is kept that's good for people. It's a kind of paternalistic thing. And the dictionary, the Oxford English Dictionary, I am an Englishman, sorry, definition of the word museum is still a building or place where works of art, scientific specimens or other objects of permanent value are kept and displayed. And when Nancy and Richard and the team and I met and started talking and started digging into this, and we were like, well, what if you played this game with the concept of the museum? If that's the subject here, and maybe arguably in its consumer era, if museums have largely become have overlaid onto this a layer of visitor attraction business, but fundamentally stayed here. What is it in the citizen era? And we've been playing with an idea that we wanted to put out there because it's in the museum, it's in the NewsWeb thinking, that a museum in the citizen era should be a catalytic space for the inspiration, curation, and creation of culture by, with, and for the public, or the people. And I think what's powerful about that and what's in that is that the collection fundamentally matters. So much of what's talked about in the future of museums tries to ignore collections and say that they matter. The collection is right at the heart of this, but it's not where it ends. And in a world where platforms are what we need and things that empower us and enable us to create culture ourselves rather than just observe it, that's where this starts to go. So this is a thing that's sort of in the thinking of the NewsWeb launch, but and it's open to challenge and it's working draft like everything with this. So that's the first thing we wanted to share. The second thing we want to share is some of the stuff we do know. So we do know that the name is changing, right? We do know we're going from museums to the web because it's logical, right? In 1997, museums were here and the web was here. Right now, bang, right in there, one and the same. Like, we're in that context now, but things have fused. So museums and the web to NewsWeb. We know that what we want to do with NewsWeb is go from a thing that's about making technology work for museums to now we inhabit this world of this technology, using technology to make museums work for society. We know that that's part of what this is about. We also know much more prosaically that this is about going from a conference to an organisation, right? And we know it's about going from a moment in time, a spike, and nothing around it, because Museums of the Web has been a conference, and there's been other stuff, but it's been that moment, to a movement, to a thing that builds through over time, and that these things, these conferences are kind of spiked within that rising tide rather than a moment outside. And we know that it's going from an event where we bring people together and convene and see what happens to a catalyst where we try and make more of that and try and push things forward. So that's what we think we know, right? That's some of the foundations that we're building on. But here's where the conversation starts. Here's where we open up, and that's in the spirit. So this is one of Nancy's favourite quotes, and I've adopted it as one of mine. But this is right in the heart of the kind of philosophy and the approach of NewsWeb. Go to the people, live with them, learn from them, love them. Start with what they know, build with what they have. With the best leaders, when the work is done and the task accomplished, the people will say we have done this ourselves. That's about us, as all of us. It's about the work that we might achieve as if we're all, so it's about NewsWeb as leaders of this. It's about all of us as leaders of the museum community. It's about what could this look like if we step into this agency. And it's why, because this is so core to the philosophy of the team, this is why we're opening up this conversation in this way. So what I'm going to do now, to start this off, and then we're going to go to the floor and take any first ideas or contributions or reflections or big up to the NewsWeb teams or whatever. What I'm going to do quickly is I'm going to put up a series of either-ors. Now these are set up as false dichotomies pretty much, but I'm going to force you to pick which one you think is right. You think is the centre of gravity. You think is the thing that should be the more of the focus than the other. Okay. So there's going to be two things on the screen. I'm going to give you 2 or 3 seconds to digest, and then I'm going to say, right, first one, hands up, second one, hands up. And you can only put your hand up once, okay? Everyone understand the rules? Good. So, first one, is this going to be about shaping culture through institutions or shaping cultural institutions? Take 2 or 3 seconds. Hands up for the first one. Nice and high. And the second one. Interesting, nice tension. Second one, delivering projects or enabling people. What's MuseWeb's focus? What should it be doing? Should it be delivering projects or enabling people? Hands up for the first one. Ooh. Hands up for enabling people. Next one, creating space or facilitating action. Hands up for the first one. There's some thought, there's some thinking going. Hands up for the second one. Okay. Next one, drinking about museums. Woo! Or formal training. I think I know where this might go. Hands up for the first one. Excellent. Now I understand you. My job as a brand consultant is done. A formal training for the second one? Sorry, you don't have to feel bad if this is what you do. Thank you. The next one, an idea incubator or innovation consultancy. Hands up for the first one.
Those aren't mutually exclusive.
None of these are mutually exclusive. I apologise. Hands up for the second. This is, as I say, this is more about the kind of centre of gravity, the balance, than it is about we're going to do one and not the other. It's interesting for us to understand where the vibe in the community is. Next one, influencing directors, there's just a couple more, or enabling change makers. Hands up for the first one. Interesting, surprising a little bit. Hands up for the second. Yeah, good. Okay. And finally, what are you? Are you participants or are you clients? Hands up for the first one. You're all just volunteered. Hands up for the second. Okay, good. Okay, great. So that's where we that's been really helpful already. This is the beginning of a conversation for the week. We've got another 15 minutes in this room right now. We've got the whole of the rest of this week. We've got an email address and an open conversation and a hashtag, and this is really, you guys just said you wanted to be participants in this. So help these guys, help the team figure out what this thing is going to be, how it can have most effect in the world, right? Let's start that off. I'm sure there's people who've been sitting on something that they've thought, I wish someone would do this, and is now sitting there thinking, this is the perfect organisation to do this. If you've got something like that, step up, say it right now. The response will probably be, go do it then, we'll help you. Or if you've got feedback or thoughts or anything, step up. We're trying to steer this a little more, less into kind of Q&A territory. I don't know if you want to question my analysis of society afterwards, then feel free. But I think this is a space for the MuseWeb conversation. Is that cool? Good. So, anyone want to step up to the mic and kind of bring something into the room or do you want a moment to... Actually, tell you what we'll do. What we'll do is we'll just turn and we'll have a 3 minute chat in pairs. So turn to someone, ideally someone you don't know, if there's someone behind you, if you come at the front, and just have a little chat about what you've heard for 2 or 3 minutes, and we'll have a little digestion moment before we take some more from the audience.
How's it going?
What's that?
I'm just gonna.
Got a surprise. But I mean, best in the lab specifically doesn't look like having a website.
You've got a countdown clock of 6 seconds. So look, I don't want to cut off conversations completely, but this is something that we're hoping to see. And I just come back into the room just briefly. Come back to me, people. Hello. So look, the last thing I want to do is stop this conversation, because this is exactly the conversation we really need to be having as a community, and we want to find ways to harvest it. I just want to offer the opportunity again for people to come to grab the mic or to take a stand. Okay, here we go. There's some stuff coming up. So let's just take a few soundings and see where we go.
Hi. So one of the things that I've noticed at a lot of these conferences is that I'm here from DC, and getting on the plane on Tuesday morning or going out to coffee this morning, I bumped into a lot of other people who work in DC. And one was like, man, we always have to come 3,000 miles from home to see each other. Why don't we ever get together in person? So Charlie had this amazing idea that the way that MCN does their local networking is that they all get together around special interest groups. We all talk about particular topics that we have in mind. But what if got together around local coordination, where we got people, we have the DC News Web group, the Boise News Web group, and we all get together and we actually learn from one another. Something that I really love about these conferences is that we get to learn from one another as equals. And so often we go back home and we look at one another as adversaries. But finding ways to bring that spirit of collaboration from the conference back home.
Amen.
And I think you might just have volunteered to be the sort of hub of the DC chapter. I think I'm afraid Nancy saw you, so yeah, that's what happens here.
Hi. So this is something I mentioned to Nancy earlier, who suggested that I bring it up here. But I thought, as many of us did, Corey's talk was really great this morning. It got us thinking about things that are very real, happening right now, and that actually do have implications, even though it doesn't seem like the Panama Papers had anything to do with our institutions. These questions of data and privacy and something else really do. But I know that one reaction that a lot of people, or at least people I talk to, seem to have is like, how can we even begin to tackle this in our institutions? And I also think it's something we're not really thinking about day to day. So one thing I would love to do is just have kind of like, maybe first starting with a reading group and turning into a working group with people just thinking about these issues and what it means for institutions. What kind of data are we collecting? Who are the different departments of people doing that? And then how can we communicate that to our organizations? But in a kind of, I'm interested in doing it in a really thoughtful way, and very inclusive way. So it's not just like people come up with standards that we should apply to our organization, but make it a conversation.
All right, thank you. We are capturing all of these things, and we've got a website, we've got the email set up, so we're going to be gathering all this stuff and more and more and more. So thank you. Next, we're going ahead.
Hi. So the past meeting has been really inspiring. And it's been really cool to be in the same space with a lot of the institutions that we look to for inspiration. I come from a very small organization. I'm representing a full third of my team today. So if we want to there are a lot of advantages. I won't deny it being smaller people, love it. But major disadvantages, we have a cool idea, or we're inspired by something that's happening elsewhere. It's basically me, I'm going to be doing it. And we
Oh yes, can we, do you want to do that now? From now on, if you can say your name, if you've said something already, please come and tell me.
Everybody except for...
Can you come and just tell us who you are? Sorry, thank you.
Okay, we got you.
We got you.
We know who you are.
There's intelligence everywhere.
I'm Ms. Lily Zarina. If you don't have my Twitter handle already, it's called tweeting. I haven't fully thought this through yet, but I was just thinking where are the gaps in places, and I think that over time we've seen collaborations happen. That back to Steve.museum, Tap Turmoil, and then also something like when Rob was at the IMA Lab and kind of serving as this kind of in the middle for the community figure, and now he's at AAM. Starting next week, right? Or now? I think that's public. And so I'm not, and I get that, like, we don't, I think it's really tricky when we did the dichotomy on the doing projects. I think it's a slippery slope to do projects, but to have those discussions and advocate for standards that we're all working together on. It's because I feel like we're also, a lot of times I feel like we're moving into these custom things again, and so the pendulum switching, so really, and using focused dialogues and having more discussion oriented, because also, and I'm blabbering on, but I think that the conference is actually kind of a more delivery model, and so to have it so there's more discussion, and then how we can become advocates for standards and how we become a stronger field through the kinds of projects that we've done before, that through the IMA Lab served as that, as kind of a center of making sure that we were thinking about those and other projects like Steve, Tap, Turmoil, that kind of thing, which are a lot of people in this room, or some of the people in this room who are involved with. So having it more discussion oriented and really advocating for standards and moving us forward.
Thank you. I think these guys are, you go.
Hi, I'm Max, and I was just thinking about what John, you were saying with all this presentation, and thinking about if we're starting a nonprofit, you're talking about mission statements, you're talking about reports, all this stuff. You think primarily about the vision of what you're doing. Sorry. Yeah. That essentially, what's the world that you want to create? What's the and you start getting at citizens and what is this, and once you have that in place of what's this world you want to create, and you have to, if you want to keep the business going, you want to keep the whole thing going, it has to be something that's unattainable. It has to be something, this uber vision of what the impact is that this organization is going to have. And I think a lot of museums could actually benefit from stating some of that impact and what kind of impact we're going to have on our visitors, right? And a lot of museums aren't really very good at that. So once you have that, then all of these ideas that everybody's saying, they're all really great ideas, are going to be operationalized into the mission of what the organization is going to do, because you can figure out, okay, who are we for, right? Because you have the vision of what the world's like when this work is done, but and then that will tell you, who it is. Once you know who you're serving, what you're going to do just falls straight into that, and that's where the alignment comes in with all those things. And I don't know if that's something you guys have already been thinking about, but just some in terms of, I just think we keep the vision really solid.
So we've got another volunteer to help us holding that. Thank you.
Hi, Maurice Silver. I thought about the publication and the papers. Publication that's very influential in web design is Alyssa Park. Its responsive web design was a paper in that publication. And I find that museums on web papers that they don't. And I can't get through them all. And each one is
God, sorry. Okay, I met Emily in the first timeless orientation. I'm quite scared that I may need help. Do you want to go?
Oh, no, you went first, please. Okay. So I think that actually museum technology might not exist. And that our biggest job for the coming 20 years is disseminating the field of museum technology across the entire museum. And so I think one of our biggest problems that we're going to face is training all the other, maybe just 2 or maybe 200 staff in our museum, all how to use technology in efficient ways in all areas of their jobs. So I think expanding it beyond technologists, expanding it beyond the people maybe that even are here who are marketing people or just beginning to touch technology. This is something that a significant part of our jobs have to become training everybody, making everyone an advocate, making it central to everyone's job for the future of the entire field, not just us.
Right, thank you.
Emily, I'm glad you went first because it's a good segue into my thing. My name is Jonathan Tabs. This morning I was a virgin. Using the web.
It's been a good day.
It's been a good day. And before coming, I had meetings with a couple institutions in Barcelona a few weeks ago, and they were talking about this as being a really great conference. So I got here, the stuff that was shown was really great, and everything that I've heard, it was actually refreshing. Some of the people going up and presenting and actually giving real data, like this is what we're paying. These are the things that we ran into. My background is mostly entertainment, technology here in Southern California, and also I do stuff globally, but if you go to these things and everybody's like, oh, it was super, and they gloss over the bad things. So the fact that this is all shared here, one thing after listening to your piece, I agree with all of it. I'll be provocative here. Why call it, okay, we've moved on from museums and the web to MWXX. Because that to me seems like it's like, okay, great, you're talking about the web. Great for 2006, you know? So I'm wondering if when you say web, it's too much about tactics or medium as opposed to what can you do with connectivity? How can you influence, not just, as Emily said, not just the people that are coming to your museums, but everybody inside. So I'm sure all of us, in whatever field, we've tried to push something that's innovative, that's new, and sometimes you feel like you're beating your head against the wall. So it's all those tools so that if it's published, when I'm going to somebody and saying, hey, let's do this, I have the data behind it. Oh, we saw that this group did an audio piece and they're charging 98% pickup. You know, those types of data points are awesome to have. And that's where, but again, it's not just about the web, it's about connectivity, those intertwining pieces and having the tools to be able to make it happen.
Right, it's a really lovely answer. It's a really lovely note to end the session on, because I think what we've had in the contributions from the floor is all the way through from kind of specific thing that we can do right now to sort of how to shift the publications thing to how do we frame the vision of this thing to what's the name like, and these are, and I think these are all live questions. These are all things that we are genuinely as a team kind of holding and wanting to hold together. That's not to say that this is going to be a kind of consensus decision-making process with 700 people and everyone who's ever been to museums. But it will be, but it's genuinely a soft launch of kind of, this is where we're going, here's some stuff that we know, we genuinely want you to participate in that conversation, to make contributions, to make provocations and challenges. There will be some decisions made and it will go forward, but we've got some really interesting models to draw on, and we want more of those as well. So if you have analogies or organisations that use or whatever it might be named, you can learn from, work with title, then please do send those in as well. Last thing I'll say, that email address again, just remind you, future@MWXX.us, MWXX.us. Send in stuff, keep the conversation, the energy that was in the room when you guys were talking to each other. That was lovely. Please do keep having that conversation if you get a chance to. It might be a lovely icebreaker if you meet someone you don't know. And just keep the stuff coming in, and we're going to be listening. So thank you very much. Anything else you want to say, Nancy?
No, it was excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.